The morning after Angela sat at her desk, staring at the ring on her finger. Her thoughts were a whirlwind. Was she making the right decision? Just as she reached for her phone, a knock on the door interrupted her. "Come in," she said softly. The door opened, and there stood Tommy, dressed sharply and carrying a bouquet of flowers. His expression was calm, but Angela could tell he was preparing for something. "Angela," he began, closing the door behind him. "I wanted to apologize for how things went yesterday." Angela raised an eyebrow but didn't speak. Tommy placed the flowers on her desk and sat across from her. "Look, I know the proposal wasn't perfect, but what matters is we're getting married. That's the most important thing, right?" Angela sighed, leaning back in her chair. "Tommy, it's not about the proposal. I want us to be happy in our marriage. But that happiness has to start with how we treat each other now." Tommy waved her concerns away with a small chuckle. "Don't worry about that. We are happy, Angela. Sure, we're not perfect, but we always push through. That's what relationships are, accepting each other's faults and moving forward. So many people are jealous of what we have. Can't you see that?" Before Angela could respond, Tommy leaned closer, teasing her with a playful smile. "You're lucky to have me," he said, kissing her. Angela pulled back, her cheeks flushing. "Tommy, stop it. We're in the office." Tommy laughed. "And that's why I'm the perfect man for you, my darling. I always know how to turn your mood around." Angela shook her head, trying not to smile. "You're impossible." The confrontation, a sharp knock on the door, broke their moment. Angela straightened her posture. "Come in." The door opened, and Mabel walked in, a file in hand and a frown on her face. "Hi, you called me?" she said, her tone clipped. Tommy leaned back in his chair, his demeanor shifting. "Mabel or Mabel, whatever your name is, do I look small to you?" Mabel blinked, confused. "Excuse me?" Tommy stood, pointing an accusatory finger. "If you can't respect me as a man, can't you at least respect my position in this company? And secondly, I'm your boss's fiancé. I deserve some respect." Mabel's frown deepened, and she crossed her arms. "Oh, what a way to announce your engagement. Congratulations, I guess." Angela interjected quickly. "I'm sorry, Mabel. I meant to tell you later," but Tommy cut her off. "My love, you don't need to be sorry. She's just a secretary. You don't owe your staff anything." Mabel's eyes flashed. "Listen, Mr. Tommy, I don't know what's eating you up, but I said hi when I walked in. If you didn't hear it, I can say it again, and I'll even add your name to it. Hi, Mr. Tommy. Does that settle it?" Tommy's face turned red, but Mabel wasn't finished. "And for calling me just a secretary, well, that's for Angela to decide, isn't it? She's always been proud to share her good news with me. If she didn't tell me about this, maybe she's not as happy as you think." Tommy slammed his hand on the desk. "Don't twist your words. Angela, this is why I've told you to stop discussing our relationship with her." Mabel held up her hands mockingly. "Oh, forgive me, fiancé to my boss. I'll stay in my lane." Tommy's voice rose. "Do you hear that? She's mocking us. Angela, this is exactly why I can't take her disrespect anymore." Angela stepped between them, her voice firm. "Mabel, stop. Tommy, calm down." But Tommy shook his head, grabbing his briefcase. "I can't deal with this. I have work to do." Just as he turned to leave, the door opened, and Kevin stepped in with a file. "Good morning," Kevin began, but Tommy brushed past him, muttering under his breath. "Fools," Tommy snapped as he exited. Tensions rise. Kevin blinked, confused. "What's going on here?" Mabel smirked. "Oh, nothing. Just following the hand life dealt me." Angela rubbed her temples. Mabel, please don't go anywhere. I'll be right back. Kevin held up the file. Madam, the file, Angela waved him off. Not now, Kevin. She hurried after Tommy, leaving Kevin and Mabel alone in the office. Kevin turned to Mabel, his eyebrows raised. Seriously, what just happened? Mabel grabbed the file from Kevin's hands. Nothing for you to worry about. She walked out, leaving Kevin standing there alone. Kevin looked around the empty office, throwing his hands in the air. Why is it every time I enter a room, people leave? Is this bad luck? Did I forget to pray this morning? Shaking his head, he walked out as well, muttering to himself. Angela caught up to Tommy in the hallway. Tommy, wait. He turned, his expression hard. What is it now, Angela? She hesitated, her voice trembling. Why do you keep making me choose between you and the people who care about me? Tommy's jaw clenched. Because those people are ruining what we have. You need to decide, Angela, are you with me, or are you with them? Angela froze, her mind racing. Far away, Mabel sat in the break room, her phone buzzing with a text from Kevin. Are you okay? Should I stay out of this? Mabel sighed, her fingers hovering over the keyboard. No, Kevin. You're already in it. Be ready. In his car, Tommy's phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen and smirked. A message from Anna, lunch in. My place. Don't be late. The break room confrontation. Angela walked into the break room, her heels clicking softly against the tile floor. Mabel sat at a small table near the coffee machine, sipping her coffee, her expression unreadable. Without looking up, Mabel said, Are you here to scold me again? Take his side, as always? Angela sighed, sitting across from her. Mabel, I get it. You don't like Tommy because of his past mistakes. But he's changed. And anyway, it's me he hurt, not you. I've forgiven him, as the good Christian I am. Why can't you do the same? Mabel placed her cup down, a bitter smile curling on her lips. So now you're quoting the Bible to me? That's rich. She leaned back in her chair, shaking her head. You know what? I don't want to drag this out any further. Like I said before, I'll keep my mouth shut from now on. Honestly, I don't even know why I still bother. Angela frowned. What's that supposed to mean? Mabel leaned forward, her gaze piercing. When he called me just a secretary, what did you do? You stood there, Angela. Silent. Maybe he's right. Maybe I am just a secretary. So fine, I'll be just that. Angela's temper flared. Maybe that's better. I'm tired of trying to make you understand things, Mabel. If you want to be just a secretary, then so be it. Mabel's eyes widened, her voice rising. Understand things? Angela, do you even listen to yourself? Can't you see what he's doing to you? Angela snapped, her voice cold. Save your sermon, Mabel. I don't need it. Tommy will be here after lunch to discuss the board meeting. Before then, I want you to apologize. Mabel stared at her, incredulous. Apologize? Are you serious right now? I don't want to hear anything else, Angela replied sharply, standing up. Mabel watched as Angela left, her coffee now cold in her hands. Her chest ached, but it wasn't anger, this time, it was sadness. Mabel remained seated, staring at the door Angela had just walked through. She whispered under her breath, What has happened to you, Angela? Where's the woman I used to know? Meanwhile, Angela leaned against the wall outside the break room, her chest heaving with frustration. She rubbed her temples, trying to push Mabel's words out of her head. Unbeknownst to her, Tommy's car pulled into the parking lot. From the passenger seat, Anna leaned over, laughing softly. "I'll text you later," she said with a playful smirk. Tommy chuckled, adjusting his tie. "Don't keep me waiting." Angela turned to head back to her office, unaware of the storm brewing around her. The meeting room. Angela, Kevin, and Mabel sat in the cold, tense atmosphere of the meeting room. Kevin noticed immediately that Angela and Mabel were avoiding eye contact, their silence heavy with unspoken words. He tapped his pen on the table lightly, trying to ease the awkwardness, but no one reacted. The door opened, and Tommy walked in confidently, dressed sharply, his presence commanding the room. He took a seat at the head of the table. "Is everyone here?" Tommy asked, glancing around. "Yes," Angela replied curtly. "We only need those who have functions to handle." Before we start, however, she turned to Mabel. "Mabel, you have an apology to make. Over to you." Mabel's expression tightened, but she stood reluctantly. "I apologize for the way I answered you earlier, Mr. Tommy." Her tone was stiff, her words clipped. Before she could fully sit down, Tommy leaned back in his chair with a smug smile. "It's good you're learning your place, Mabel. Though, to be honest, that wasn't much of an apology. But I'll let it slide. For today." Kevin clenched his fists under the table but kept silent. Angela cleared her throat, steering the focus back. "Let's begin the meeting." As she outlined the agenda, Tommy interrupted her. "Kevin," he said, his tone casual but sharp. "Can you get me a cup of coffee?" Kevin looked up, startled. "Me?" Tommy raised an eyebrow. "Is your name not Kevin? Or are you planning to be rude like some others in this room?" Angela, clearly annoyed, sighed. "Kevin, can't you get coffee for our guest?" Kevin hesitated, glancing at Mabel, who kept her gaze down. Finally, he stood and left to get the coffee. When he returned and placed the cup in front of Tommy, Tommy glanced at it and said, "I also need milk." Kevin straightened, irritation flashing across his face. "Why didn't you say that before?" Tommy smirked, his tone condescending. "Why didn't you ask me before? It shows how incompetent you are." Kevin's jaw tightened. "Excuse me? What do you mean by that?" Angela interjected sharply. "Kevin, get the milk." Kevin looked at Tommy, his lips pressed in a thin line, then shook his head and walked out again. When he came back with the milk, Tommy leaned back lazily. "What about sugar? You didn't think to bring that too? You really should consider the kind of people you employ in this company, Angela. A good assistant would bring everything at once and let me decide what I need." The room went still. Kevin's grip tightened on the sugar container, his knuckles white. He looked around, searching for support. Mabel kept her gaze down, avoiding eye contact, and Angela's expression was hard, almost angry. Kevin finally placed the sugar on the table, his voice low but firm. "Here you go, Mr. Tommy." Tommy smirked, taking his time stirring his coffee. "That's more like it." The rest of the meeting continued in an icy silence. No one dared to say what they were truly thinking. Michael's request later that evening, Angela sat in her room, staring at the ring on her finger. Her mind drifted back to the tense meeting, Kevin's clenched fists, and the hollow look in Mabel's eyes. She exhaled sharply, trying to push the thoughts away. "Mom?" Michael's small voice broke the silence. She looked up to see her 10-year-old son standing in the doorway. His face was hopeful, but there was a hint of nervousness in his voice. "What is it, sweetheart?" Angela asked. Michael shuffled closer. "I was wondering. Can you ask Kevin to come over? I want to play another game with him. He doesn't reply to my messages anymore, and he doesn't answer my calls." Angela's heart sank, but she forced herself to sound firm. "Michael, you won't be seeing Kevin again." I need him to focus on his work. It's not good for colleagues to get too close. Michael frowned. But you're close with Tommy. Angela's breath caught, and she straightened. Tommy is different. He's my boyfriend, and very soon, we're going to get married. He'll be your stepfather. Michael's face darkened, his fists clenching at his sides. I don't like him. He'll never be my father. Michael, you don't care about what I want, he yelled, running out of the room. Michael, come back. Angela called after him, but it was no use. She buried her face in her hands, whispering to herself, "You'll understand someday, sweetheart. When you're older, you'll understand." Across town, Tommy sat in his car outside Anna's apartment. She leaned against his car window, smiling slyly. Ready for another fun night? She asked, twirling her hair. Tommy grinned, unlocking the passenger door. Always. As Anna slid into the seat, Tommy's phone buzzed. It was Angela. He stared at the screen for a moment, his smirk fading. Aren't you going to answer? Anna teased. Tommy pressed decline and turned off his phone, flashing Anna his charming grin. No distractions tonight. Back at Angela's house, Michael sat in his room, texting Kevin. But for the third time that day, there was no reply. Michael clenched his phone, a tear slipping down his cheek. At the same time, Kevin sat alone in his tiny apartment, staring at his phone. Michael's name flashed on the screen, but he didn't answer. He tossed the phone onto the table, his head in his hands. Mabel sat in her car outside her house, gripping the steering wheel tightly. What happened to you, Angie? She whispered, staring into the darkness. Unseen by all of them, cracks were forming, threatening to shatter everything. The investors' meeting, the boardroom was silent except for the faint hum of the projector as Angela stood confidently at the head of the table. Investors, her team, and Tommy sat watching as she used the projector to explain her company's strategy. The presentation was seamless, clear charts, growth projections, and innovative plans to achieve their goals. After finishing, Angela turned off the projector, smiled warmly, and took her seat. Thank you for your time. I hope this presentation shows how committed we are to helping you achieve success with us. There was a polite round of applause, but the moment was interrupted when Tommy stood abruptly. Angela, he said, his voice cutting through the room. There's a document you didn't talk about. Angela looked puzzled. Which document? Tommy crossed his arms. I sent it to your secretary. Did you not get it, Mabel? All eyes turned to Mabel, who furrowed her brows. I didn't receive any document, Mr. Tommy. Tommy's face darkened, and he slammed his hand on the table. Are you calling me a liar? I won't tolerate this insubordination. Angela raised a hand to calm him down. Tommy, let's not escalate this. It's just a misunderstanding. Tommy shook his head, standing even taller. No, Angela. It's either her or me. I can't work in this company if I'm constantly disrespected by your staff. You have to choose, Mabel or me. The room went silent. Angela looked between Tommy and Mabel, the tension thick. Tommy, it hasn't gotten to that. Tommy leaned in closer, his tone sharp. It has. I can't take this anymore. Either she's gone, or I walk out. Mabel stood, shaking her head, her voice steady but filled with emotion. Angela, you're going to regret this, sister. Tommy smirked, turning to Angela. She'll regret keeping incompetent people, not firing them. Make the decision, Angela. Angela swallowed hard, her voice trembling. Mabel, you're fired. Leave us. The room held its breath. Mabel locked eyes with Angela, her expression calm but deeply disappointed. You'll regret this decision, Angela. Tommy. Enjoy your smile while it lasts, because it won't. Tommy's smirk grew wider. Get out of here before I call security. Mabel grabbed her things and walked to the door, turning back once. Good luck, Angela. You're going to need it. Then she was gone. A deal in the shadows. The meeting resumed, but the tension lingered. One of the investors, Mr. Johnson, leaned forward, his expression serious. Miss Angela, if we're going to work together, you'll need to keep emotions out of your business. No friendship in business. I'll let this slide because of Tommy, but don't let it happen again. Angela flushed, forcing a smile. I understand. My apologies for the disruption. The meeting continued in a cold, stiff atmosphere until it finally concluded. After the investors left the room, Tommy got up and grabbed his phone. I'm going to see the investors off, he said casually, leaving Angela and Kevin behind. In the parking garage, Tommy shook hands with the investors. You guys did well today, he said, his voice low and conspiratorial. Mr. Johnson smirked. The next step is clear, buy the shares. Just remember, Tommy, don't let her meet the real investors. That's your job. Another investor chimed in, she trusts you. Keep playing her. Make sure she doesn't catch on until it's too late. Tommy grinned. Don't worry. I've got it handled. She's never met a real investor in her life. She thinks I'm her only connection to the business world. As for that Mabel woman, she was a thorn in my side. Now that she's out of the way, the rest will be easy. Mr. Johnson leaned closer. And the documents? Tommy chuckled darkly. After a little bedtime fun, I'll hand them to her and have her sign them immediately. She always forgets herself when I handle her in bed. You'll have what you need soon. The men laughed, shaking hands before leaving. Tommy leaned against his car, his smirk never fading. Back at home, Angela came home exhausted, her mind spinning from the day's events. As she walked upstairs, she found Michael in his room, packing his small suitcase. Michael? She asked, confused. What are you doing? Michael didn't look at her. I'm packing. Packing? Why? Michael zipped up the suitcase and turned to her, his face serious. Can you take me to Auntie Mabel's tomorrow? I want to spend the weekend with her. And tell the nanny not to come. I don't need her. Angela's chest tightened. Michael, that's not possible. A lot has happened between me and Mabel. Michael frowned, crossing his arms. What happened? Did you make her sad? Or did she make you sad? I can help you make peace. I've done it before. Angela shook her head, her voice soft but firm. No, Michael. It's beyond that. Mabel doesn't work with me anymore. I fired her today. Michael's jaw dropped. You fired Auntie Mabel? Why? She doesn't respect your stepfather-to-be, Tommy, Angela explained. And I won't tolerate disrespect. Michael's face turned red, his small fists clenching. He's making you hate your friends. I hate him. He's not my father, and he'll never be my father. And you know what? I hate you too. Angela froze, stunned by his words. What did you just say? She whispered. Michael didn't answer. He grabbed his suitcase and ran upstairs to his room, slamming the door shut. Michael, come back here. Angela snapped, climbing the stairs after him. Who taught you to speak like that? Her voice echoed through the house as the scene ended, leaving her words unanswered. Upstairs, Michael sat on his bed, his small hands trembling as he scrolled through his phone. He stared at Auntie Mabel's number, hesitating before finally hitting call. Far away, Mabel sat in her car, her phone ringing in the silence. When she saw Michael's name, her heart sank. Hello, she answered softly. Auntie Mabel, Michael whispered, his voice breaking. Can I stay with you for a while? Mabel's chest tightened. What's wrong, sweetheart? Did something happen? Michael sniffed, tears streaming down his face. I don't want to be here anymore. Back at Angela's house, she stood outside Michael's room, knocking furiously. Michael, open this door. Downstairs, her phone buzzed with a message from Tommy. Coming over later. Have some champagne ready. Angela didn't see it, her focus on the locked door and the child who was slipping away from her. To be continued.